Hi, I'm Bobby Shell, and today I'll be talking to you about hemophilia. So what is hemophilia? Hemophilia is a rare genetic disorder that prevents a person's blood from being able to clot. Typically what happens is when you get a puncture to your skin, red blood cells as well as platelets and little mini fibrins will come together to sort of form a scab that will help prevent blood from coming out of the wound. However, for a person with hemophilia, that doesn't happen. The blood just will keep going. The blood can't clot, and it's fairly dangerous in that aspect. Sort of the odds of having hemophilia. So about 1 out of every 16,000 people in the U.S. will have hemophilia. About 1 out of 5,000 of them will be males, while about 1 out of 11,000 of them will be females. Even though that fact seems a little biased, hemophilia does affect all groups and sexes. However, men are more prone to get the disorder, mainly because hemophilia is a recessive X-linked chromosome disorder. So what that means is men only need one mutated X chromosome in order to contract the disorder, as opposed to females who need both X chromosomes to be mutated in order to have hemophilia, which we'll get to in a little bit. So it does tend to affect males more because, again, they only need the one mutated X chromosome as opposed to the females who need two. It is recessive. It is a recessive disorder and trait, but it can still happen, so it's not something to take lightly. And hemophilia is caused by a mutated chromosome, which we will get to in a little bit. So here we have like a little example of the Punnett square of what hemophilia might look like. So here we have in this first Punnett square here we have the mom being a carrier of hemophilia. What happens here is there's a 50% chance that the child will be completely normal, boy or girl, but there's also a 25% chance that the daughter could be a carrier for the mutated X chromosome, and there's also a 25% chance that the son will have hemophilia because, again, he only needs one mutated X chromosome. Now, if both parents have the mutated X chromosome, which is very rare but can happen, what's going to happen is there's going to be a 25% chance for the daughter to be a carrier of hemophilia. There will be a 25% chance she will have hemophilia. There's a 25% chance that the son will have hemophilia as well. And at the same time, there's a 25% chance that the son won't have hemophilia and will be healthy. So, again, just a visual representation of how everything works out kind of genetically. So, speaking of mutations, here we have what causes hemophilia. Hemophilia is caused by a mutation in the X chromosome that affects the factor VIII and factor IX genes, or F8, F9 genes, depending on what you want to say. Hemophilia is caused by a major deficiency of either of the genes in the X chromosome, and depending on which one is less, you will either get one of a couple types of hemophilia. The most common types that relate to these two genes are hemophilia A and B, which essentially are the same. However, A is like slightly less severe, but only slightly. Now, these genes may be like lessened, usually caught because of some kind of issue that occurs while transcription happens. Something gets read wrong, or there's a mutation, something changes, etc., etc. And what usually happens is the genes that get affected will make amino acids, or will stop making amino acids that make proteins that help with clotting, clotting to occur. So again, in the picture here, we have kind of a rough sketch of what it looks like. So you can see here that there are both the F8 and F9 genes, and the F8 gene is fine, while the F9 gene seems to be a bit deficient. So that's kind of the specifics of what can cause hemophilia. So now that we've gone into those specifics, and all the genetic stuff and all that kind of stuff about hemophilia, let's go into some of the signs and symptoms of hemophilia. So, the most common signs and symptoms of hemophilia include large or unexplained bruises on the body, joint pains, blood in your urine or stool, internal bleeding, nosebleeds, and prolonged bleeding, which basically means if you get a cut or something, the blood will probably just not stop coming out. So, again, in the picture here, you can see hemophilia will cause that cut to basically not stop bleeding unless it gets some kind of medical help. Now, despite that, however, hemophilia does not make you bleed faster. You bleed at the same rate. That's a common misconception, but it is not true. So don't worry about that. So let's just say you may have some of those symptoms and you may be wondering if you have hemophilia. Well, there are ways to test to see if you have hemophilia. The basic only way you can see if you have hemophilia is by taking a blood test. Again, if you show the symptoms mentioned and you may be skeptical, or a doctor recommends it or something, then, they'll take blood, the doctor or whoever's taking your blood will take the blood and they'll just do tests on it to check the levels of F8 and F9 genes. If there's a deficiency in one of them, again, you will be diagnosed with hemophilia. Now, that's typically more for some, children to maybe young adults or older, depending on when you get checked. If you're worried about your baby inheriting hemophilia, or really any genetic disorder in general, then there are prenatal tests which are available that can show A, whether or not the parents carry the mutated gene, and B, what the chances of the child having hemophilia is, depending on which parent or parents have the mutated gene. So those are for unborn children, and if you're wondering about the chances of that are. So if you have been diagnosed with hemophilia, just know that unfortunately it cannot be cured. However, as you can see, there are ways to sort of subdue the symptoms and issues that hemophilia puts up through some help with some proper medical help or just medical support in general. For example, there's things like clotting promoter medications, IV fluids. Both of these help with, clotting to occur artificially. These help get things into and through the veins. The physical therapy or seeing a specialist could help too, like seeing a hematologist or orthopedist. Fibrin sealants can also be used to sort of, again, help artificially clot the blood if there is a cut. And then, less related to hemophilia and more just for precautionary measures. Vaccines for other, non-genetic based diseases. And by that I mean they aren't because of a chromosome mutation or something like that, like viruses. Like things like viruses or bacteria, taking like vaccines and antibiotics for them to just make sure that you can't get some kind of disease that enters your bloodstream when you already have hemophilia to worry about, but now you have the flu or something. So something like that, just vaccines in general are pretty helpful. And then minor first aid if like you do end up getting a cut or something, or bleeding occurs. All those things can be helpful for treating hemophilia. And again, as you see here in the picture, this child is administering his own sort of medication to help with his hemophilia. So how does hemophilia affect your life? Well, overall your life will be affected a little bit by hemophilia. For one, you're probably going to need to go to the hospital more for like regular checkups and tests to be done, just to see your status, how you're doing. However, because of this, you're probably going to be missing out on some more social actions like school and maybe friends, social events, other things you may need to do. You're probably going to miss out on those, maybe a little bit more because of that. Afflicted people also just need to be more careful in general to avoid unwanted cuts and related issues. And then also knowing how to deal with the occasional nosebleed or bruise is also very helpful to know. Um, Food is okay. Nothing has been proven to like really hurt a person with hemophilia. However, just again, be careful with maybe sharper foods like chips or something. Just be careful so you don't get some kind of like cut in the back of your throat. Maybe avoid hot foods as well to not burn anything. Yeah, all that. And then on top of that, people will need to stay in as good a shape as possible just to keep the body healthy, make sure the immune system's working well, all that kind of stuff. Reduce pressure on the bones, whatever, all that kind of stuff. However, hemophilia is also a big financial strain, especially when you consider how many like prescriptions you're going to need to get, all the tests they do on you, and all the time you're going to spend, all like the time in the hospital, all those little appointments, all those will add up to be fairly costly. So that is an unfortunate financial downside that hemophilia brings up. So now that we've gone over like what hemophilia does, how a person can be like tested for hemophilia, how they can treat hemophilia, and like how it affects their life, let's talk about more like the end goal of result that hemophilia sort of brings up. So again, so in the end, it is possible to live a fairly good life with hemophilia. Again, it will be altered, and all the ways we mentioned above: social, financial, etc., etc. So it's going to be a bit different in terms of those aspects. However, as for your overall life expectancy, that kind of depends on the amount of treatment you receive while having hemophilia. So, for example, people who don't get the proper treatment they need or don't get any treatment at all will probably die before adulthood, which is about 18 to 21 years of age. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, people who do get all the proper treatment they need will usually live a semi-full life, but still will die about 10 years before the normal life expectancy. So in the US, that's around the 68 to 70 year mark. So that's kind of like, so again, you can live a full life with hemophilia. It's not like it's a set death clock. It does shorten your life overall, but it's not like, oh, you're probably gonna die like very early in life, and no matter what you do, you can't stop it. No, it's not like that. So that is kind of a benefit of hemophilia. It's not super life-threatening if you sort of take all the precautionary measures. So that is good. However, again, overall, hemophilia is not a very fun disease to have, as it is dangerous in its own ways. So that was hemophilia. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.